Hello, thank you so much for joining us. This is Ruhee from the Allied Collective. Welcome and thank you for joining us for the Ask the Expert series. Ruhee?
Thank you, and thanks for organizing it together. I know it's a big, deal coordinating so many experts. So thank you for having me.
No, not a problem. I'm really excited. So I was fangirling Ruhee on LinkedIn for a while because she does such incredible work with diversity and inclusion, and her company, the Allied Collective. Is it the Allied Collective or Allied Collective?
Allied Collective.
Just Allied Collective works in facilitation and for businesses to make businesses more inclusive. So I guess, would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself, Ruhee, and why you started your company?
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Wurrung people on the land of the Kulin Nation on which I live and work. And thanks for joining in, everyone. And yeah, so I have a background in psychology, business management, and interestingly, yoga teaching and yoga philosophy.
Mhm.
So I moved to Australia about 11 years ago from India. I grew up in Mumbai, the land of Bollywood. And as my career progression went on, I kind of found like the diverse industries that I worked in addition to my diverse, academic background, lended a very unique perception or perspective I had on how I approach leadership, work, hiring, recruitment as a manager. So I just found this kind of need to bridge the gap between diversity and inclusion, which we're hearing a lot of, and to make it sustainable in terms of systems, processes, and policies,
Yeah.
really changing it from that systemic level. And at the same time, putting this lens of well-being on top of it, because right now we know that, burnout is a whole endemic that's happening in the workplace and worldwide. And also to prevent, toxic workplaces, which is also another issue that needs to be addressed. And yeah, addressing inequality requires dimensions of various elements of well-being. When we look at, physical or mental or spiritual, but then we ignore things like digital well-being, or in today's case, financial well-being.
Yeah.
And for me personally, that is such a topic that's close to my heart, because we know women always get the shorter end of the stick. We end up with less in our super, so it's kind of raising the floor a little bit to give equity a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that some people watching the replay might unfortunately know a little bit more about the diversity in a workplace than they'd like to. I've had some clients who've had very unfortunate situations with, workplace bias, workplace discrimination as well, and also discrimination in the hiring process as well. So it definitely is a topic that's important and really close to the hearts of people who are watching. Absolutely. And going back to financial, so the topic that we're going to be talking about today, I said salary negotiation because it's a topic, it's a question that I get asked a lot, and I do my best to answer it, but it's not an expertise that I have. But Ruhee talks about salary negotiation, but also just generally negotiation skills as well. So I guess we'll start, and if anyone has any questions, let me just pop the chat box up. So excited, Melissa says here. Can you see the chat there?
I can't.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Oh, yeah, I can see it now.
Melissa says, so excited. Yeah, it's going to be a great one. If you've got any questions, anyone, just pop them in. I can't reply, I don't think, but we'll keep an eye out for them. And anyone watching the replay, I'm sure if you pop them in the comments, Ruhee will be happy to answer as well. So let's start with the basics. So salary negotiation. One of the biggest things that people should also obviously know is research beforehand. Have an idea of the salary expectations for their job and their industry. Sometimes there is a lack of salary transparency on job adverts, which I know people are trying to change. But how can people research to be best educated before they go into a situation where they should negotiate salary?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's so many elements to this, right? And when I look at negotiation as a whole,
Hmm.
it is really about psychology and the
Hmm.
business, I guess, of changing people's minds. So there's a huge element of change management. So I think I'll talk about that later. But to address the question, the research, right? You should not be in a conversation, especially if it's an in person conversation on salary negotiation,
Hmm.
without having a number to start with. So this is kind of what I suggest. And I will preface by saying I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have a finance background, but what I do really well is I'm in the business of changing people's minds. So it is that human psychology element and my real life experience in salary negotiation in which I have been successful. So I kind of take my learnings and kind of just spread the good word and all my learnings that I've learned over the last few years.
Yeah.
So when you're in the room, you want to make sure you have a number to at least start with. If you're comfortable with a more written format in terms of negotiation, you can always start with a starting number. And negotiation, it's kind of a bit of a volleyball play where, they say, oh, you shouldn't be stating the first number, but you should have, I guess, a rough idea of what they are expecting to pay. And like you said, in the age of, pay transparency, it is increasingly acceptable and expected for employers to disclose their pay before you go into that salary negotiation room. And if they're not giving away the at least a range before you go into the negotiation, I would say do a bit of more due diligence going in. You can always speak to people in similar industries. It doesn't have to be within the same company. You
Hmm.
can find someone, LinkedIn is such an awesome, welcoming place. Case in point, we meet such incredible people. You reach out to someone, who will be like, yeah, let me know what range I should be going for. So kind of research like that, but definitely ask upfront without any hesitation because it is expected for employers to tell you the range.
It is, but unfortunately, I still see when I'm obviously helping people, supporting
Yeah.
people with their job search, there is very few applications and even in interview situations where employers are transparent about the pay yet. So I do think we've got a lot more work to do from an employer perspective. But would Seek be good enough?
Yeah, so there's Seek, there's Glassdoor.
Yeah,
You can do a simple Google around this role salary
yeah,
range in Australia, and
perfect.
that usually comes up with a very big range. But then again, there's so many nuances, right? And there's so many kind of intricacies when there's a range involved, because often what happens is there's a lack of transparency within that range. What does that upper range mean? What does that lower range mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so Melissa just asked how to answer that question in an interview. Once I answered that with a number between the range on Glassdoor, like we said, and the interviewer looked at me weirdly.
Yeah, so with that, Melissa, I would kind of answer the second part of the question first. In terms of psychology, why do you think they're looking at you weirdly? And in that situation, it's very high pressure, right? So we're afraid
Mhm,
of judgment, we're afraid of rejection, we're afraid of, I guess, failure in
mhm.
that negotiation. And the quote that I really start with is don't bargain yourself down before you get to the table. So when you're going into a negotiation, be super confident, be very, transparent and open. And at the same time, when you have a range, you need to have three prices in mind. You have you have your dream salary,
Mhm.
you have your acceptable salary, and you have your walk price. It's kind of like, this is my dream salary. It's like, if this is gold, I'm gonna take it. And
Yeah,
then it's like, this is acceptable for me. I'm going to be content. I'm going to be happy. This is kind of my baseline. And then anything below that is my walk. Like, I walk away from the conversation because I know I deserve more. I deserve better. So it doesn't mean that you disclose that upfront. It's just that you are confident enough in that range that you have for yourself. And in this, if you give them a range, Be confident in your research as well. If they look at you weird, that's fine. That means they probably haven't done their research. Or
Yes.
maybe if they are looking at you weird, ask like, hey, what do you think, what are you offering in terms of what is the range that you're advertising this role for?
Absolutely. Hope that answers your question. So I feel like there's a lot more that you can say here, and perhaps I'm not sure about the right questions to ask you to get it. So would you just like to tell us your experience with salary
Yeah,
negotiation and kind of what you're talking about in terms of the psychology of it? I'm
absolutely.
really interested in that because if I'm honest, that's probably something I haven't really thought about.
Yeah.
So absolutely, if you could just tell us a bit about that and your experience from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, from your last statement, Melissa, in the chat,
Okay.
you said, according to your experience, I'm going to be happy between this and this. That is a completely acceptable answer. And I wouldn't be, I guess, concerned about how the other person responds as long as you're confident in that range that you're providing them. But you always want, I guess, that dream price and that acceptable price under which you're not willing to accept any offer. In terms of psychology, so there's a few principles that I talk about when it comes to negotiation and not just salary. This comes to any kind of, if you're pitching for a project or a client or anything in general.
Mhm.
One of the best quotes that I've heard on negotiation is both parties are equally unhappy, which means that you reach a compromise where both of the parties feel like they've given a bit, but they're also getting a bit. So you're looking at what do you have to offer?
Mhm.
What does the other party have to give you? Because it's an exchange, right? It's
Yeah.
not just want, but it's also positioning your value proposition in terms of this is what I'm providing and this is the value that I'm going to give. Another thing to remember about negotiation is that it's a conscious choice. Often, what happens is that we get into this mind frame of like, oh, I'm not getting what I want, but have you communicated that to the other party, right? Sometimes we can get a bit I guess, in a mindset where it can feel like, oh, we've been put into that situation, but you give your power away. So, how can you get your power back? Is remembering that I choose to be in this negotiation room. And once I choose to be in that room, whether it's in person, virtual, or even via email, you're making a choice to be there. And as soon as you make a choice, you're giving your best. So, communication is a huge aspect of have I communicated what my expectations are? The other part is challenge your assumption of like, have you made any assumptions about the role? Or have you been like, oh, they're judging me for like, quoting this price, it's too high, they're giving me weird looks. Challenge that assumption, that story in your head. Because, like I said, it's a very high pressure environment. And the psychology piece comes in here because your fight or flight mode can tend to kick in. And as soon as your fight flight mode kicks in, your limbic system, which is your reasoning part of your brain, goes offline. So you need to be really grounded, whether it's through meditation. I know it sounds surprising when it comes to negotiation, but being present in your body, in your breath, and holding yourself in your own power is the most important thing. Another principle that I remind people is that negotiation is 90% listening. It's not about
Mhm.
asking for what you want, it's
Mhm.
about listening to the other person, what they're looking for in that role, and positioning your value proposition according to what they said. So, I'll give you an example of a real life situation that I had in a senior leadership role that I was in prior to becoming, full time business owner. So they advertised this role between a range, and the difference was about 20 grand. I obviously wanted the higher end of the role. So going in, it was like an email kind of negotiation. So bit virtual calls, bit emails. And then I asked, what kind of expertise or experience are you looking for within that range? And they listed all of those things. And I'm like, you know what? Even though I don't have the exact kind of parallel experience in the same industry, I know that the skills that I have, I've already kind of demonstrated that in my previous roles. And this is why I'll be qualified for that higher range. And then they came back and said, we don't have the budget. And I'm like, okay. So what I did was I positioned another solution. And this is another principle. For every problem, go with a solution rather than being like putting your hand up and being like, oh, this is too hard, or they're not accepting what I'm saying. Always be in a solutions oriented mindset.
Yeah.
This is also going to prove to them that you're a leader in your own right and you can solve problems. So what I went back with is that, you know what, I'll accept the mid-range kind of range to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 3 months, can I ask for a revisit of my role? And then on hitting KPIs, can I go to the higher end of the spectrum? So it was kind of like we're both losing a bit because I'm losing at the start in the first 3 months.
Yeah.
And they're kind of meeting me halfway after 3 months.
Yeah.
So this is a classic example of both parties are equally unhappy, but they're also equally happy, right? Because they're getting their KPIs hit. I'm getting the higher end of the range after 3 months. So it's kind of thinking out of the box. So it's that about so many other things. Can you think of things outside of the salary? Can you revisit the salary after probation 3 or 6 months?
Yeah.
Can you look at flexible work perks? Can you look at a profit sharing basis? Can you look at paid time off? Can you look at a sign-on bonus as well?
Mhm.
Sometimes companies will give you a sign-on bonus. Internal equity, membership, parking. I know it's a big one with like cost of living and everything. A lot of workplaces also give a lot of perks like that, insurance and things like that.
Excellent. So it happened so I'm going to think about this from the perspective of many of my community who are perhaps not feeling that confident in their abilities because the migration struggle gets you down a little bit. The issues of language barrier and communication, so there's a lot of imposter syndrome feeling. So if someone doesn't feel as confident to actually negotiate to that level, what would you say to them? What advice would you give to them to get themselves to the stage to be that person to negotiate?
Absolutely. So I think that is that key point of power, right? Where are you giving your power away?
Yeah.
And the underlying fear. There's when something is holding us back, we're sometimes or most of the time aware that something is holding me back. In that, can you reflect in what is my fear right now? And for a lot of people, including people entering the workforce, migrants, refugees, the stakes are high because this is your livelihood, right? If you would literally negotiate like your life depends on it. And that's why the higher the stakes are, the higher the fear of failure. And that's why, especially women that I've at least spoken to, tend to accept the first offer they're taken, and tend to negotiate a little bit less or tend to feel less confident.
I've done that before, many
same.
times before. I don't think I would now, but even not at a young age, I absolutely just that's what they're offering me.
Exactly, right? And we're in this kind of we've been in this has been ingrained in us of like, oh, be grateful, you're getting this role, and there is this temptation, to get it. But one thing I want you to remember is that if you ask for a higher price, okay, in any negotiation, not just salary, and they say no or like take back the offer, that is a red flag in its own right.
Yeah, 100%.
So one thing to remember is, what is the worst they're going to say? Is they're going to say no, but they still want you. And that's why you're in that conversation already. So in that, look at that. I would advise people, like even my past self, is see what that underlying fear is. Often it is very much from a place of, that imposter syndrome, sense of self-worth. But know that if you're in this room, you have value to add. You have skills, expertise, and the experience to bring to this table. And that's why you're there. And with the confidence piece, it's something that I've had my personal journey on. And it's to realize that nobody is going to be your biggest cheerleader or advocate except for you. No one is going to be, and it's getting better. The community is so supportive now. and I have allies who speak my name in rooms in which I'm not there, so I can do that for other people. But know that you are your biggest champion. That if you might feel like an imposter, even showing off about, I guess, your work achievements. But the thing is, you have to do it because no one else is going to. And one of the biggest, I guess, things I've practiced in my previous roles is, how do you build that value proposition, right? Is you keep a folder, no matter if you're looking for a job or not right now, if you're doing any kind of role right now, have a folder
Mhm.
and document everything you have achieved.
I
Because trust me, do you do that as well?
look, I don't. I'm a massive hypocrite, but I really should. I know, but I call it a brag book. Just to simplify it.
Yeah,
And I've actually got a free download somewhere that I
yeah,
gave away last Christmas, and it's exactly that. It's a brag book, and keep like everything you've achieved, but even small things. I
yeah,
say, compliments. If someone says you did a good job, if you felt proud about something, if you did something scary, like had a really difficult conversation. So just things that you're proud of as well. Because yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but yeah, I
no,
do
no,
tell people to do that,
yeah.
and because it
That is
boosts confidence and self-esteem.
absolutely. And even like screenshots of like praise that you've gotten,
Yeah,
perhaps from a senior leader. And
yeah,
like that is your testimonial. Because if you look at it, you are your own personal brand. You are your business, regardless of whether you're or not you're working for yourself or someone else. You need to document everything that you've achieved,
yeah,
because not only is it going to be useful in your, um, kind of holster when you go into that negotiation, it also gives you that self-confidence. So
yeah,
when you are having that self-doubt of like, oh, I don't know if I can, ask this much, you go back to that
yeah,
folder and reaffirm that I have done all of this, and that is why I deserve to ask for that number.
absolutely.
And make sure when you're documenting it, you're backing it with data, because in that conversation you are going to come across as more confident. You've done your homework when you can speak directly to results, to data, and
Mhm.
speak to like big vision. And this is another thing I've learned, especially in senior roles, when you do a bit of research on the company's vision and goals, and even the previous company's vision and goals, like how have your achievements directly related or lended to them achieving, the company's bigger vision and goals. Really speak to that. Speak to retention, regardless of, what your plan is. Speak to retention being like, I want to grow within this company, and retention does cost, is very highly valuable for so many employers.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. I had a question that I completely forgot. Sorry. I was just thinking about the brag book. I want to also ask you, so I know some people watching are men, obviously, but Ruhi has a lot of knowledge and experience for women as well. So female, because obviously, factually, there is a gender pay gap. And I know a lot of my community are women, particularly women of color. So can you talk to them? What would you say to them? What's your experience and your advice for them from your own experience?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, we look at data which is affirming, but it's saddening at the same time, because women of color still continue to be underrepresented, especially in senior roles. I literally did a post a few days ago where, Monash University did a study that was released that, people with ethnic names receive a lot fewer callbacks as opposed to people with English names. And it's so, I mean, it's obvious to any ethnic person with a unique name, like mine out there, that it's such a basic thing that you can just have your resume rejected on. So I would say to, women of color out there, and even to my past self, is like, you're not alone in this. Reach out to your community and come together to, I guess, seek validation, because often the systems can gaslight us into saying, oh, your communication is not good, or you need more leadership experience,
100%.
but
Yeah.
have no way to make it tangible. What does communication mean to you? Communication looks like different things for different people. And we're very used to a very corporate, male dominated way of communicating, which doesn't work for everyone. So we need to go beyond that. And I think, again, it really comes to that self advocacy piece. Please advocate for yourself. Start, being a thought leader in your own right. And I coach this to a lot of my clients is, oh, I don't want to be a leader. I'm happy with having a role and I'm happy in my role. And I try to reframe that is that leading doesn't always mean managing a team. A manager and leader is very different. You can be a leader for yourself. You can be a leader if you're a solopreneur. You can be a leader if you're the only person in your team. It is about leading yourself. So how are you really positioning yourself as a leader in your own self? And then it is going to translate. That energy will be exuded because people can see, you can lead yourself, others, and the organization.
Absolutely. This kind of goes hand in hand with what Katrina from Reframe Counseling was talking about yesterday about the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yep.
And so, yeah, if you haven't watched that, it's really interesting to kind of see the perspective of Ruhee and the stories that you're telling yourself about your communication skills aren't good enough. You're just happy for the job. You don't have the confidence to negotiate. But as Katrina was saying, where's the evidence of any of this? Where's the data? You're both talking about data. It's fascinating. So yeah, absolutely. It's a really fascinating way to look at it. So where is the evidence? And I'll just say, which I say often to a lot of my clients who say their English skills, they always say my English isn't good enough. I'm not getting the job because of my English skills. But to me, as an English teacher of 10 years and a career coach, your English is good enough.
Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between communication skills and English skills. And you can learn communication skills. And there's a whole heap of people out there who don't have good communication skills. And it's to do with their English.
Yes.
Everyone has different communication styles as well. So it's like separating communication skills and English is a huge mindset shift as well.
Absolutely. There's so many people out there that speak English or perhaps only English.
Yeah.
But when they talk, they don't say anything. So it is about
listening as well. You mentioned listening. Communication is so much about listening and not just everything about speaking. Yeah.
100%. And there's another quote that I love is that one of the best ways to persuade others is by listening to them.
Yeah, I love that.
And in another part I want to drive home is literally 90% of your conversation has to be listening, because you're listening for what the other person wants, and you're reframing your value depending on their positioning as well. Another point that comes up, or questions that come up, is using your personal, I guess, goals to advocate for the price that you're asking for within a negotiation. And that is, personally, I find through my experience, is a big no-no, is that, I'm trying to save for a house. That really doesn't fly. It doesn't make a difference to them. And even using things like, I guess when you're a woman, you kind of feel like you have to give excuses for the price that you're going for, which is outside of the work situation. So I once had a client where they're like, oh, should I say that I'm child free and I'm willing to relocate to a city, and I don't have a partner, so will that make me more attractive as a candidate? And my response to that was that, in that, if you do say that, you're not being a great ally to other women who do have families. And it really is about reinforcing, I guess, thinking about how are we also lending to the systems of patriarchy, and can we challenge that? Because if the employer is asking about your marital or child status, that is a huge no-no. Exactly. And they shouldn't be discriminating based on that. So you can say that, I'm willing to relocate, and that could probably be a, plus for you as a candidate, but not giving, I guess, any personal reasons away.
Love that. So can we just kind of take it back a bit and summarize through the perspective of, I guess, my community who might who might be relatively new to Australia or relatively new in their chosen field. Because quite often, and I'm sure you can relate to this, being, 11 years ago, moved to Australia, and me, I've been here almost 11 years as well from the UK, moved to Australia, really struggled to find a job. Migration is really expensive, so you get a survival job, and then perhaps you've worked in hospitality, cleaning, as a nanny or something for maybe 1 to 4 years. And so throughout that time, confidence has been lost. They generally feel like they haven't used their skills, and mental health is a big issue as well,
Yeah.
as we know. So then they're at the stage where they are ready to get back into their chosen field, whether it be the experience from their home country or something new, where they're not very confident.
Mm-hmm.
They've been knocked around a little bit. So can we go through step by step what they should do if that's how they're feeling?
Yeah,
Make
absolutely.
sense?
Oh, 100%. And it's definitely easier said than done. And I guess even the experience and the place that I come from is, a place of privilege. And I acknowledge that this knowledge has come with time. I've had my really tough times, but the place where I am at and the rooms that I get to, I guess, negotiate in does come from a place of privilege. So I guess I can't speak to everyone's experience, but I guess to past Ruhi when she, recently moved, and I had a bachelor's degree. I was a certified yoga instructor, but none of that was recognized. So that first step is recognizing that our systems do not set up migrants and refugees for success. And there is so much pain and helplessness that you feel. So know that like it's not you, it is so much of the systemic barriers that are setting up, new migrants and refugees not in the best way. So know that you do deserve better. Like all the qualifications and skills that you have, they are so valid, even if they're not being recognized just yet. The second step I would say is find your collective, find your community, speak to someone, go out there. It is really hard. I first moved to Canberra for the first 2 years when I moved, and there was really a lack of community, people that looked like me, especially leaders and female leaders that looked like me that I could, I guess, role model or look up to. So really find those people. Again, LinkedIn is such an amazing resource. People are so helpful.
Yeah.
And, find, I guess, events you can go to, network, grow your network. And it's not about just finding a job. It's about creating a personal brand for yourself, because that is going to last you a lifetime. Companies will come and go, but, just really advocating for yourself. And in terms of mental health, seek support, seek community, whether it's, a professional therapist or counselor, or, a more informal community that you feel comfortable with. Really don't hesitate to ask for help, because it can be one of the most empowering things that you do for yourself.
Absolutely love that. And just with the technical strategies as well, which I feel like some people might be, thinking about, that is research. Make sure that you're walking in to the negotiation room, and the negotiation room could also be an email. It could be a phone call. Yeah. It's very rare to have that experience in an interview. Is that correct, or would that sometimes happen in an interview?
Look, they might ask, what kind of price you have in mind. So in that, you kind of have to have that conversation of like, what is the range you're offering?
Yeah.
But when you are going into a conversation, you should have a bit of a range, like Melissa said, have a bit of a range in your head. And have an if-then strategy as well. Going back to that feeling of power or control, we feel safe when we have a plan. So have a plan going in of like, if I get this amount, then, this. If I get this amount, I'm going to go with these value propositions. And if this amount, can I have the conversation in another way or ask for something else? So when you create this flow chart, whether it's in your head or even on paper, it's really going to help you regain that power and self-control. And another thing I like to say is take control by saying that, hey, I prefer to keep this communication by email, because you
Yes.
can think about it, you can go back and then reply to them in your own time. If
Yeah.
you're the type of person who feels nervous over the phone or in virtual or in person, just be like, hey, can we have this conversation over email? And in that case, you're also documenting everything.
Yes.
And another big piece is document
Yeah.
every part of the negotiation process.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. So let me just summarize, because if I've got it in my head, hopefully other people do as well. So it's all about feeling empowered. I'm going to say empowerment. And that is for men or women. I know we've spoken a lot about women and the salary gap, but it's for men as well. Feel empowered about your skills, and understand your value that you have and believe in them. Research the salary range for the industry and research the company's values. And I'm going to go say as far as make sure, I say this all the time, read the job adverts again and again and again, because that is the skills that they want. Absolutely. And make sure you are evidencing the skills that they ask for within your responses to prove that you have the skills enough for the higher salary range.
Absolutely.
So always go in prepared with numbers and research. If they ask you in the interview situation, you could say the range. You can also say you would prefer to email your responses and have a think about it. When the negotiations start, there's no rules, but it's all about feeling your worth, right? It's about feeling your power, feeling in control, feeling confident, and just, knowing your worth when you are talking about your dream target number.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do it target number, and no, not doing it. I'm going
to always have your walk number. Yeah.
My target number as well. And the negotiation, say through email, always give evidence about the skills that you can do to demonstrate you deserve the higher amount. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's pretty much it. There's definitely rules, but I think you establish the rules for yourself before you go in, like the non-negotiables as such, and the principles of choice. But yeah, I think you've summarized that really well. And the last quote, I love quotes if you haven't noticed.
I wish I was written down. I'm probably going to go listen back.
One of the best quotes I also love is that you don't get what you want, you get what you negotiate.
Yeah,
so you don't ask what you don't get.
Yeah, great. Look, I'll be honest, I'm not very good at negotiation. I think that's something that I absolutely need to work on. And it's been fascinating, genuinely fascinating, listening to all the different kind of factors that go into negotiation when it comes to the psychology of it. So yeah, this has been incredible. There's so much valuable information, and I feel like I need to go and kind of like look at the transcript and take it all out and write it all out for everyone. But yeah, if you're watching the replay and you've got any questions, just comment, and Ruhee and myself will be happy to answer for you. Do you have anything else to add, or anything?
No, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I offer coaching as well in terms of.
Oh yeah, that was a question. Sorry, I'm so sorry to interrupt. That was a question. You've talked about your clients. So I was under the impression that you work with business. So is that not? Can you tell us what you do to help people in negotiation?
Absolutely. So I work with businesses as well. So in terms of inclusion and well-being, so conducting trainings and workshops and making their hiring and recruitment processes more inclusive and their systems and policies. But I also work with individuals in terms of confidence coaching and well-being coaching as well.
Perfect. And do you have a link for that service I can share here as well?
It's just through my LinkedIn and my website.
So there's a link on your website. Perfect. I'll have a look. Perfect. So you would help with people who are potentially looking for promotions, who need to leadership coaching, confidence coaching, that type of thing.
Absolutely.
Great. That's amazing. Okay. Well, my daughter's about to walk in and she's 3. I was saying to Ruhee, she's off daycare today, but my partner took her out for a banana smoothie. So she's going to start screaming. So we might need to finish this one.
Really good negotiators.
Yeah, really. Oh, God. I don't even bother negotiating this. I was like, shit, fine, Freya, just do what you want. Like, so they win hands down through the roof. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks
You've been
for having
amazing.
me.
And the replay will be available on LinkedIn, but I'm also going to add the replays with subtitles on YouTube and my website soon. And you can read the transcripts as well. So all that will be out soon. But thank you
Amazing.
so much. You've been incredible.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. Yeah, it's been great. It's been fascinating. I feel like I've learned a lot about this.
I'm
And I know that I need to be better at negotiation and things like that.
We're all getting there.
Yeah, for sure. We're all learning. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.